The windswept plains of Montana Territory held secrets that few white men would ever discover. But what cattle rancher Samuel Morrison found limping through a blizzard on that bitter February night in 1887 would challenge everything he understood about survival and gratitude. A magnificent stallion, sacred to the Blackfoot tribe and presumed lost forever, stood dying in the snow with injuries that spoke of desperate flight from unknown dangers. What Samuel chose to do during those crucial midnight hours, risking his own life in subzero temperatures to save an animal that meant nothing to him personally, would bring an entire Blackfoot band to his doorstep under the cover of darkness. His selfless dedication to preserving life would forge bonds between cultures that territorial hatred had declared impossible. Chapter 1. Storm and Salvation. The Montana Territory winter of 1887 unleashed its fury with the relentless cruelty that had claimed countless lives across the northern plains. Samuel Morrison pulled his coat tighter against the howling wind as he struggled through knee-deep snow toward his barn, each step a battle against the blizzard that had transformed his ranch into an Arctic wasteland. At 42, he had survived 15 brutal Montana winters, but this storm tested even his weathered endurance as visibility dropped to mere feet in the swirling white chaos. Samuel was securing his cattle barn when movement caught his attention through the driving snow, something large and dark stumbling across his pasture with the unsteady gait of an animal in distress. His rancher's instincts immediately recognized the shape as a horse, but no sensible rider would be traveling through such deadly conditions unless driven by desperate circumstances. As he approached with a lantern held high, the wind-blown snow parted to reveal a sight that made him catch his breath despite the freezing air. A magnificent stallion stood trembling in the storm, his powerful frame reduced to a shivering shadow of equine nobility. Blood stained the snow beneath the animal's hooves, dark trails marking where injuries had slowly drained strength during his struggle against the merciless elements. The horse's breeding spoke of exceptional bloodlines that few ranchers could afford, his conformation suggesting speed and endurance that commanded respect throughout the territory. Silver decorations adorned his bridle, their craftsmanship indicating ownership by someone of considerable wealth and status. Most telling were the distinctive markings painted on his flanks, symbols that Samuel didn't recognize, but which clearly held cultural significance. Samuel faced a decision that would test every survival instinct the frontier had taught him. The smart choice involved leaving the dying animal to nature's harsh judgment while preserving his own safety in the warm cabin. The storm showed no signs of abating, and attempting to move an injured horse through such conditions could prove fatal for both man and beast. Yet something in the stallion's eyes spoke of intelligence and spirit that transcended mere animal instinct, dignity that demanded respect regardless of practical considerations. The horse had somehow survived impossible conditions to reach this place, demonstrating the kind of determination that Samuel recognized in his own struggles against territorial hardships. Without hesitation, Samuel began the dangerous work of leading the injured stallion toward shelter, knowing that his choice would set in motion events that would transform his isolated existence forever. Chapter 2. Healing the Sacred. The warmth of Samuel's barn provided blessed relief from the howling Montana blizzard as he examined the stallion's injuries by flickering lantern light. Deep gashes across the animal's flanks told stories of desperate flight through thorny underbrush, while swollen joints indicated hard running over treacherous terrain. Most concerning were the rope burns around the horse's neck and legs, evidence of recent captivity that had ended in violent escape during the storm. Samuel's experience with livestock served him well as he cleaned wounds with careful precision, his gentle hands working to remove debris and apply makeshift bandages torn from clean cloth. The stallion stood with remarkable patience despite obvious pain, his intelligent eyes tracking every movement with the awareness of an animal accustomed to human handling. This was no wild Mustang, but a carefully trained mount whose breeding represented years of selective development. Over the following days, as the blizzard finally exhausted itself across the Montana plains, Samuel dedicated himself to nursing the injured horse back to health. He prepared warm mashes of oats and bran, hand-feeding the stallion to restore strength lost during his ordeal in the freezing wilderness. The animal's appetite gradually improved, though his wariness suggested traumatic experiences that would require time and patience to overcome completely. The stallion's distinctive markings became more visible as his condition stabilized, revealing intricate symbols painted in natural pigments that spoke of deep cultural significance. Samuel recognized these as Native American designs, though their specific meaning remained mysterious to his untrained eye. The craftsmanship of the horse's remaining tack, a beaded bridle of exceptional quality, confirmed his suspicion that this animal held special importance within tribal society. Samuel's neighbors remained unaware of his secret patient as he maintained his normal routines while providing round-the-clock care for the recovering stallion. The isolation of his ranch worked to his advantage, preventing curious visitors from discovering the valuable horse hidden in his barn. He understood instinctively that questions about the animal's origins could lead to complications that might endanger both himself and his unusual guest. As February temperatures began their gradual climb toward spring, the stallion's strength returned with remarkable speed. His wounds healed cleanly under Samuel's attentive care, while his natural vitality reasserted itself through increasingly energetic behavior. Yet something in the horse's demeanor suggested homesickness that transcended simple animal instinct, a longing for familiar surroundings and people that no amount of physical comfort could satisfy. Samuel found himself wondering about the stallion's true owners and the circumstances that had brought such a magnificent animal to his doorstep during Montana's worst blizzard in memory. Chapter 3. The search continues. Across the snow-covered expanse of Montana Territory, Chief Running Bear led his Blackfoot warriors through their third week of desperate searching for the sacred stallion that had vanished during a raid by Crow horse thieves. The magnificent animal, known as Thunder's Heart, held spiritual significance that transcended mere monetary value. His bloodline traced back to horses gifted by supernatural beings according to tribal prophecy, making his recovery essential for maintaining the tribe's spiritual balance. The Crow raiders had struck during a moonless night, stealing over 20 horses from the Blackfoot herd before fleeing toward the southern territories. Most of the stolen animals had been recovered through swift pursuit, but Thunder's Heart had disappeared during the chaos of the blizzard that had engulfed the region. Tracks in the snow told a story of the stallion breaking free from his captors and fleeing into the storm, his trail vanishing in the windswept wilderness that stretched endlessly across the northern plains. Chief Running Bear's determination to recover Thunder's Heart stemmed from visions received during sacred ceremonies, dreams that revealed the stallion's destiny as a bridge between the Blackfoot people and forces beyond their understanding. The tribal medicine man, Singing Crow, had interpreted these visions as prophecies of great change coming to the territory, with the sacred horse playing a crucial role in events that would reshape relationships between all peoples living on the northern plains. Meanwhile, Samuel's secretive behavior had begun attracting unwanted attention from neighbors who noticed his frequent trips to the barn and reluctance to accept social invitations. Tom Bradley, whose ranch bordered Samuel's property, had observed unusual activity around the Morrison place and grown suspicious about what his solitary neighbor might be hiding. The territorial atmosphere of mutual distrust made any deviation from normal patterns subject to speculation and gossip. Federal authorities at Fort Benton had received reports of increased Native American activity throughout the region, with cavalry patrols noting unusual movement patterns that suggested tribal agitation. Captain Mitchell interpreted these signs as potential preparation for spring raids, unaware that the Blackfoot searches represented spiritual necessity rather than military planning. His increased patrols brought unwanted scrutiny to the very areas where Chief Running Bear's warriors continued their methodical search. Samuel remained oblivious to the converging forces that would soon transform his quiet ranch into the center of unprecedented cultural encounter. As March arrived with its promise of spring, the stallion's complete recovery approached while tribal searchers methodically eliminated every possible hiding place throughout the territory. The sacred horse's location would soon be discovered, bringing together two worlds that frontier hatred had declared forever separate. Chapter 4. Midnight Visitors. The March night settled over Samuel's ranch with an unnatural stillness that made the Montana air feel heavy with anticipation. A full moon cast silver light across the snow-patched landscape, creating visibility that transformed the familiar terrain into something ethereal and mysterious. Samuel had retired to his cabin after completing evening chores, unaware that dozens of Blackfoot warriors had been positioning themselves around his property since sunset, their supernatural stealth allowing an entire war party to surround his ranch without disturbing a single animal. Chief Running Bear dismounted at the edge of Samuel's pasture, his weathered face reflecting moonlight as he studied the ranch buildings with the tactical precision of a leader who had survived 30 years of territorial warfare. Behind him, 25 warriors waited motionless on horseback, their discipline evident in their perfect silence despite hours of careful positioning. Each man carried weapons secured for ceremony rather than combat, their presence indicating spiritual business that transcended the usual tensions between cultures. The Blackfoot tracking party had finally traced Thunder's heart to this isolated ranch through signs invisible to untrained eyes, disturbed earth around the barn, unusual hay consumption patterns, and most tellingly, the distinctive scent signature that identified their sacred stallion despite weeks of separation. Singing crows' spiritual guidance had led them unerringly to this place, confirming visions that had promised the horse's recovery through unexpected circumstances. Samuel awakened to his dog's low whining, an unusual sound that immediately triggered the frontier instincts that had kept him alive through 15 dangerous years in Montana territory. Peering through his cabin window, he froze at the sight that greeted him across the moonlit landscape. Blackfoot warriors sat motionless in a perfect semicircle around his ranch buildings, their presence so sudden and silent that they seemed to have materialized from the earth itself. Chief Running Bear approached alone, his movements deliberate and ceremonial as he crossed the distance between the waiting warriors and Samuel's cabin. The chief's bearing commanded immediate respect. Eagle feathers adorned his graying hair, while turquoise and silver ornaments caught moonlight in patterns that seemed to dance with spiritual energy. His weathered face bore the wisdom of countless battles and negotiations, marking him as someone accustomed to making decisions that affected the fate of entire peoples. When the chief raised his hand in greeting, Samuel understood that this midnight encounter represented something far more significant than a typical frontier confrontation. The presence of so many warriors without hostile preparation, their careful positioning that demonstrated respect for his property, and most importantly, the ceremonial atmosphere that surrounded their arrival, all indicated purposes that transcended normal territorial conflicts and demanded careful attention to protocol that Samuel barely understood. Chapter 5. Sacred Bonds. Chief Running Bear's voice carried across the moonlit stillness with authority that commanded attention from both the assembled warriors and the nervous rancher who faced them. His words, delivered in careful English learned through years of necessary negotiations with territorial officials, revealed the profound spiritual significance of the stallion that Samuel had unknowingly rescued from Montana's worst blizzard in decades. "The horse you have healed," the chief began, his weathered hands gesturing toward the barn where Thunder's heart waited, "carries the spirit of our ancestors within his blood. Our medicine man received visions long ago that spoke of this stallion's destiny, to serve as a bridge between our people and forces we do not yet understand. When Crow raiders stole him from our herd, they threatened the spiritual balance that protects our tribe from disasters that have consumed other people." Samuel listened with growing amazement as Chief Running Bear explained the complex web of prophecy and spiritual law that his simple act of animal rescue had inadvertently fulfilled. Thunder's heart had been born during a sacred ceremony 13 years earlier, his bloodline carefully preserved through generations of selective breeding that traced back to horses gifted by supernatural beings, according to Blackfoot tradition. The stallion's distinctive markings weren't mere decoration, but sacred symbols that identified him as a vessel for spiritual power that protected the entire tribe. The chief's revelation went deeper than simple gratitude for veterinary care. During the weeks of Samuel's patient nursing, tribal medicine men had received visions showing a white rancher providing a healing touch that preserved not just the horse's physical life, but his spiritual essence as well. These dreams have been interpreted as signs that the Great Spirit intended to create bonds between Blackfoot and settler peoples through shared respect for the sacred nature of life itself. Your hands carried no expectation of reward, Chief Running Bear continued, his dark eyes reflecting moonlight as he studied Samuel's face for signs of understanding. You risked your own survival to save a creature that meant nothing to your people, asking no questions about ownership or value. Such actions create debts that transcend the normal boundaries between enemy nations, obligations that our spiritual law recognizes regardless of racial differences or political conflicts. Samuel found himself at the center of an unprecedented ceremony as Singing Crow, the tribal medicine man, dismounted and approached with sacred objects that would formalize the spiritual bonds created through his care of Thunder's heart. The old shaman's presence indicated that this midnight gathering represented more than simple horse recovery. It marked the fulfillment of prophecies that had guided Blackfoot's spiritual practices for generations. The medicine man began chanting in the ancient language as he prepared ceremonial items that would bind Samuel to the tribe through adoption rituals reserved for individuals who had demonstrated extraordinary character. Eagle feathers, sacred stones, and carefully prepared pigments would mark Samuel's transformation from isolated rancher to recognized friend of the Blackfoot people, creating legal protections that territorial law would be forced to acknowledge. As dawn approached across the Montana landscape, Samuel realized that his simple decision to rescue an injured horse had triggered spiritual obligations that would reshape not only his own future, but the entire relationship between settler and tribal communities throughout the Northern Territories. Chapter 6: The Gift of Trust. The adoption ceremony that transformed Samuel Morrison from an isolated Montana rancher to an honored friend of the Blackfoot people unfolded with ancient precision as dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of gold and crimson. Singing Crow led the rituals according to traditions that predated European arrival in the Americas, marking Samuel's forehead with sacred symbols that would identify him permanently as someone under tribal protection. The ceremonial paint represented spiritual rebirth, creating bonds that Blackfoot law considered more binding than blood relationships established through birth. Chief Running Bear presented Samuel with gifts that carried profound significance within tribal society. A war shirt decorated with eagle feathers and porcupine quills, ceremonial weapons that marked him as a recognized warrior, and most precious of all, a medicine bundle containing spiritual objects that would provide supernatural protection throughout his remaining years. These items represented wealth beyond territorial understanding, their value measured not in dollars, but in the spiritual power they channel for their bearers' benefit. The greatest gift, however, came in the form of Thunder's heart himself. Chief Running Bear explained that the sacred stallion had chosen Samuel through supernatural guidance, his recovery representing divine will that superseded normal concepts of tribal ownership. The horse would remain at Samuel's ranch as a living symbol of the bond between cultures, while his offspring would strengthen connections between Blackfoot and settler communities for generations to come. Samuel's transformation extended beyond symbolic recognition to encompass genuine responsibilities that would define his remaining years on the frontier. His ranch became neutral ground where Blackfoot families could conduct business with territorial merchants under federal protection, while his unique status provided legitimacy that prevented either culture from viewing such activities as threatening or suspicious. The medicine man's blessing carried enormous weight throughout tribal society, making Samuel's word valuable in negotiations that had previously been impossible. Within months, Samuel's success as a cultural mediator attracted attention from territorial authorities seeking alternatives to the costly military campaigns that had consumed the northern plains in violence for decades. His ability to communicate Blackfoot concerns while maintaining credibility with settler communities made him invaluable for resolving disputes that would otherwise escalate into warfare. Federal officials recognized that his unique position could prevent the conflicts that had devastated other territories across the American West. Chief Running Bear's prophecies found fulfillment through cooperation rather than continued hostility, proving that individual acts of mercy could reshape entire political landscapes when supported by genuine respect for different cultural values. Samuel's willingness to risk his own life saving Thunder's heart during Montana's worst blizzard had created opportunities for understanding that military force alone could never achieve. The bridge between worlds that began with simple animal rescue established precedents that would influence frontier relationships throughout the territorial period. The transformation of Samuel Morrison from lonely rancher to Blackfoot brother became territorial legend, demonstrating that courage and compassion could transcend the deepest cultural divisions when guided by respect for the sacred nature of life itself. His story proved that true peace emerged not from conquest, but from recognition that all people shared fundamental values that superseded the artificial boundaries created by fear and misunderstanding. This remarkable tale of healing and creating harmony shows how one act of kindness can unite divided worlds through the universal language of compassion and respect. If Samuel's incredible story of courage and sacred bonds moved you, hit that like button now and subscribe for more legendary frontier tales that prove humanity's greatest victories come through acts of mercy, not war. What would you have done in that Montana blizzard? Share your thoughts below.